Hello and welcome to Jasmine Local's live show where we'll be discussing the upcoming local elections.
Thank you for joining us. We have a packed show for you today with some short videos and discussions from our panel.
If you'd like to leave us any comments, if there's anything you want us to discuss tonight, just want the social media platforms and make sure you use the hashtag #VoteJasmine.
So today we are joined by Student Union President Ralph Marioni and Student Union Activities Officer Sophie McDermott. Welcome.
Hello.
Hi.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for joining us this evening. We're going to be discussing some important topics that were raised at the last night's hustings event, and also comments from residents that have been left on social media.
So the local elections will take place on the 2nd of May, so why not start off the show by meeting the candidates?
My name is Jerry Keating. The ward is North Jesmond. There are 600 blue bins which have simply disappeared. Out of 2,250 bins, only 200 have caddies, so recycling has collapsed completely. I think the situation with the way the council deals with detritus and rubbish in this ward has deteriorated considerably, and I want to stop that deterioration.
I'm Tony Waterston. I'm standing for North Jesmond. I've been talking to local people for a number of years about what worries them, and I think they have little faith in the council. They are very cynical about what it does, and they don't accept that they have a view that will be listened to. Labour, the ruling party here, needs an opposition which is going to do something about the environment and climate change. Even one Green councillor could start to make a difference.
My name's Alexander Hay. I am the Labour and Cooperative candidate for North Jesmond. We have committed in leaflets to fight for a second referendum with a Brexit deal negotiated by the Prime Minister and remain as an option on the ballot paper, and we will campaign passionately and strongly to remain within the European Union. I will do my utmost to represent everybody in this ward fairly and to ensure that they receive the representation they deserve.
I'm Kitty Lau, and I'm part of the Conservative Party, and I'm running for North Jesmond. I'm a local girl, and I just would like to support the community. First decided to go for councillor is because I have a young son who's 6, and I just feel that instead of moaning and saying I don't like this or these issues, then why don't be a part of it and do something for the next generation.
My name's Martin Levy, and I'm the candidate for the Communist Party of Britain in the South Jesmond ward. I'm a lifelong trade unionist. I understand that people need to work together to improve their circumstances. You will not be able to defend what you have simply by voting. You need to put somebody in the council who's going to argue on your behalf that there needs to be a different strategy. And you've got to be prepared to go along with mobilising to defend what means important to you in the community.
Hi, my name's Deborah Burns. I'm the Liberal Democrats candidate running for South Jesmond. My children go to school there, I work nearby, and my family spends a lot of time in the ward. I'm also a student, so I feel I potentially have the ability to kind of bridge between those two communities. The number one issue that comes up when I talk to people and also in my life is traffic. It's inadequate parking for the volumes of traffic that we're seeing throughout Jesmond.
My name's Claire Andrews. I'm standing as the Green Party candidate for South Jesmond. I've got a track record of engaging with the community through things like Plastic Free Jesmond and Sandyford. I think I've also shown that I can affect change even from outside the council. So I pushed a public petition which successfully got the council to declare a climate emergency and put climate change back on its agenda at least. We need kind of a fresh new voice to help hold the council to account and to make sure that public consultation is done better.
My name's Leslie Story, and I am the candidate in the upcoming elections on the 2nd of May for the Labour Party. I'm somebody who's got a huge amount of experience for working for the local authority. I worked for Newcastle City Council for 15 years. Things that I'm really passionate about are things that impact on local residents. Hugely interested in safety for women, for children and for families. I know local government systems. I'm not afraid to challenge and I'm not afraid to scrutinise, and I will do that on your behalf.
I'm Ian McGilp. I'm the Conservative candidate for South Jesmond. If a Conservative gets elected in Newcastle, it's because people understand how dedicated we are to the city and its people. I don't believe that someone's politics defines them, or that because they disagree with me or they're from a different party that they're a bad person or I can't work with them. If I'm elected, I look forward to working with Labour, with Liberal Democrats, or anyone else who's elected to the council to ensure that this city is as good as it can be. We'll work hard every single day to ensure that the investment that's needed comes to Jesmond.
First of all, we'll take a look at some of the comments from social media.
So firstly, we have Emma Gibbon, who said that it's the council's fault about litter, and it can't just endlessly blame students, as it isn't just student areas that are like this. And then we have Colin Clark, who said that regarding the HMO licensing, that our experience is that developers / landlords / builders ignore what they like, and the council is either unwilling or unable to act. But let's discuss the candidates. So what would you like to see the newly elected councillors to achieve during their term?
I'll start. I think what I'd like to see from newly elected councillors is really sort of, I think, tackling, I think there's a few issues that are at the heart of Jesmond, including students and sort of more permanent residents. I think climate change, doing their part there in the local area. Jesmond is an area with a high density population. I think people of all ages, as outlined by Lizzie's question, how old was she? 5 years old, 5 years old. Anyway, like, I think that a lot of people like to see sort of real sort of stance on climate change and what can Jesmond do to do it. What part can Jesmond play basically? What can people live in there, play and helping towards mitigating that risk? So I think, me personally, that's one of the things that was spoken about a little bit, but I'd really like to see whoever is elected take it on.
What about you, Sophie?
Yeah, and I think going on from that, there was a really interesting discussion around HMO licensing that went on last night and selective licensing. So it'd be great to see the local councillors getting involved in the discussions around that and what will actually benefit, because I think a lot of the issues that were raised last night kind of stemmed from that. And so to address that would solve a lot of the problems I think residents face.
What do you think should be the top priorities for our candidates going forward?
I think the top priorities are a lot of the issues that were raised last night. I think, as we said, HMO licensing, because it is still in the consultation period, but it's, you know, with the view to introduce it, that's something that, even though citywide, is very concentrated in Jesmond due to the amount of HMO properties. So I think that definitely is a priority, because it's going to impact landlords, it's going to impact a lot, particularly students who are renting. So along with my sort of view of climate change, I think HMO licensing is important. Yeah, I think that's much.
Yeah, and I think the second priority will be the congestion issues that Jesmond faces. So there are a lot of cars. It can be very dangerous. So there's a safety impact. There's the climate impact. And I think that's something that would be a great priority for them to look at, particularly if Mobike is pulling out. We need to make sure that there are good public transport links in and out of the city and around Jesmond.
Yeah. So thank you so much for those comments. It's given us some good insight into what changes the candidates should be looking to make.
So some of you at home might have been at the hustings yesterday, but if not, we've got a highlight for you.
We're becoming a plastic throwaway society, and there's quite a lot that can be done. We would be pushing for a deposit scheme for plastic and glass so that they can be returned.
I see littering as another form of antisocial behaviour. Now, for the most part, Jesmond residents are very responsible, you're all lovely people, but the vast majority of the litter that I see hasn't fallen out of the back of a blue bin or that kind of thing. It's people on a night out, smashing bottles, breaking into cars, leaving things in grass verges.
I've got a slightly different take on it. I would say that Jesmond is an absolutely beautiful area. It's leafy, it's green, and it's very, very clean.
There's a problem with the use of the word cuts. You need to distinguish between unfunded cost pressures on the one hand, which are about 17 and 18 million, where the council's decided to expand the services, not cut them, and get the balances from elsewhere. And real revenue reductions, which for next year will be 3.4%.
What would I personally cut? Absolutely nothing. That would be my starting position. However, I live in the real world. I'm a pragmatist.
Austerity is a political decision, it's not an economic decision. This is a very wealthy country, and there are very wealthy people and businesses that can afford to pay a lot more in taxes and therefore fund our local services. My view would be that the council needs to be much more proactive, campaigning with trade unions and other councils around the country to say the funding settlement is not fair. It helps the rich, it doesn't help situations like Newcastle. And at the end of the day, if lots of councils actually refuse to set the budgets within their means, the government would not have the commissioners to put in to do it. The government is weak on this issue and we need to take the initiative.
I actually think we already have a good mix of students and permanent residents. More than half of residents in South Jesmond, in my ward, are aged between 15 and 24, and the vast majority of them are students. Students contribute around about £500 million annually to the Newcastle economy. So I don't see, a large proportion of students in Jesmond as being any kind of problem that has to be corrected for. Students are part of our community, and there's no reason to change that.
There's always a potential for problems where people live in close proximity. And it's not necessarily students who are always responsible for the antisocial behaviour. My son and his mate rented a downstairs, or they bought a downstairs flat in Fenham many years ago, and they had problems with the single woman who lived upstairs, who created a lot of noise. It's, I think we should set aside the fact that it's always students who are responsible for problems like this.
How are you going to fix this problem? Will you change the street and make it so there is no cars when I come to school? Or will you make excuses about how it is too difficult or complicated or grown-ups who drive are more important? Will you listen to what children want?
I think some journeys, inevitably, are best used with cars, just because of the nature of the distance to be travelled, the fact that you have to carry something, you can't do it on public transport.
Ian is wrong. You can carry huge amounts on a bicycle.
Can you carry as much as you can in a car?
I have commuted by bicycle to Newcastle hospitals for the last 25 years, carrying all my case notes and records. So there's no problem. You can always have a bigger cargo bike if you need it.
Where it has actually been operated already, in Walker, for example, it has actually improved the quality of rented properties. And where they have some problems with it, however, are with that the council is proposing to share information with the police and home office as part of the landlord licensing scheme, and that may have problems, particularly for black and minority ethnic people. We know of cases of people being the Windrush generation being deported because they didn't have the right papers. So there are issues around that, but generally Acorn's in favour and so am I.
I think it'll also help crack down on bullying and intimidating landlords.
If there are less problems that tenants experience, there's also less turnover and less empty property, which means that's better for community integration.
My one concern with HMO licensing is that it's a nagging suspicion that it might be used as a means to sort of socially engineer certain wards, that we're effectively using market forces to shift students out of, say, Jesmond, where there's a very large student population, and into these new student housing blocks. That's something which I don't think should be allowed, but absolutely, if the intention is to improve the standards of rented accommodation, then it's a fantastic idea.
We have, I think, 62% of South Jesmond ward, I believe I'm right in that, are student houses. Yes, if I could move students physically from some of the houses to actually lessen the burden. Yes, it is a burden.
I'm sorry, I just fundamentally disagree with what you've just said. In a free society, I just simply don't think it's the role of a council to tell private citizens where they can and can't live.
This notion that all students are the same, they are not.
I think we could also, as residents, kind of lead by example and actually think about some of the challenges that students face moving into a new area, a new community, and maybe living away from home or halls for the first time.
We need to take student welfare really seriously, and anyone who's elected is here to represent student residents as well.
But in terms of antisocial behaviour, the number of complaints was 360 compared with nearly 1,800 on the quality of the accommodation. So antisocial behaviour is much less an issue than the quality of the accommodation.
How to motivate people? Give them candidates that they feel are actually listening to them. A suggestion in terms of motivating people might also be to have all-up elections every 4 years, rather than situations as we have this year, which people may feel have more impact. It would be more cost-effective, more significant, and could potentially create more of a buzz.
I think you have to, first of all, bring change and show that you're bringing change.
That is what we call representative democracy, and that's what people would want.
Well, it was great to hear from all of the candidates, but we'll be discussing some of the issues that they will be hoping to tackle shortly.
From a student perspective, I think that because licensing will bring a fee with it, that would just be redistributed to increase it to higher rents, which is negatively impacts a lot of students. On a broader level though, I am supportive of the licensing scheme if its main purpose is to improve standards of living in Jesmond, because a lot of the houses that students are moving into are genuinely shocking, and landlords and letting agents, often there's no desire or there's nothing forcing them to improve these standards. You know, we're talking about a 20-30 year period where they haven't been renovated or changed. So I'm hoping that if the licensing scheme is what it's packaged to be, then it will result in a higher standard of living for students in Jesmond.
Do you think that students living in Jesmond and other residents are going to be supportive of this? Do you think it might impact if rent increases, for example?
I think the main idea of it is that the fee will go towards paying for the department itself to be able to come out and inspect these homes. And I think an increase in standards across the board will mean that people will more likely want to take care of the properties they're in. They'll invest more into the community because it's a nice place for them to live in. So overall, I think it's going to get better, and it's not going to impact, from what we can tell from what they were saying last night, any kind of council tax fees or anything like that. So the feeling won't be on the community, but instead it will be kind of redistributed around the area and the council itself.
So tying into that, another hot topic was the relationship between permanent residents and students.
Yes.
So did you agree with some of the comments made by candidates and the audience?
Well, interestingly, 4 out of 5 of the candidates, yes, and a lot of the audience, no, including one of the candidates. I think what was actually pleasantly surprising is the Communist Party, Green Party, Labour and Conservative were all very supportive of students living in Jesmond, didn't believe in an age balance, more age balanced population. They were supportive of students who contribute 150 million to the economy of Newcastle every year, make that area of Jesmond very vibrant and exciting. As you can tell the difference from the not here. But there was obviously the particular Liberal Democrat candidate who thinks that obviously it's not a positive thing having students in Jesmond, and thinks that rebalancing the population is the way forward, which I completely disagree with.
I would agree with everything that Brad said there, and I think it was felt across the audience as well that students do bring a lot to the community. We organise a lot of litter picks. Just last year we raised £250,000 for charity at the end of this academic year. So I think we do have a lot to offer, and there is a lot that can be done when we work together, and a lot of the candidates were supportive of that, and a lot of the audience, which was really pleasing to see.
Yeah. Do you think that there was a comment about students being put off staying in Jesmond and bringing up a family in Jesmond? Do you agree with that?
I think if there's a continuation of the rhetoric of students are not necessarily welcome here, there should be more younger families, then you are disenfranchising a large group of people who, when they graduate, age 21, 22, they're the sort of prime age where you want to be keeping them, and that age where they want to be starting their careers and contributing further to the economy, and then having young families in the area of Jesmond. So I think disenfranchising students is when you want to have a more balanced age population, is completely missing the boat, because there are a number of thousands of 18 to 21 year olds who love their time living in Jesmond and find it fantastic and will probably happily stay there. But if there is this continued rhetoric of they shouldn't be here, then why on earth would they stay in? And that just has negative impacts on the local economy and the potential of having more young families. But
I also think there's a slightly broader issue across the city of graduate opportunities. Once we have left university, like the kind of job market we see in Newcastle, we see a lot of people going down south after finishing their degree and then maybe coming back to Newcastle in about 10-15 years, which again is really positive, but it's the kind of steps the local council could be doing or creating jobs that could keep people in this area. And I also know, I think a lot of students, once they've graduated, struggle to stay in these areas because they are so expensive to buy a house in or to live in when you aren't renting. And that's again the market forces that come into play there. That's something that the wider community need to focus on.
Yeah, some very interesting comments there. And other topics that also generated quite a lot of discussion were litter and alcohol licensing.
I don't know the actual licensing laws that apply around here. However, I do know that we get quite an influx on a weekend, a holiday weekend. It's a little bit quieter when our student population goes home, I must admit, but we still do get a lot of them. They're centred in the middle of Osborne Road. We're not directly affected by it because we live just outside that particular area. But I do understand it might be difficult for any residents living around here. I think they've got to be within the law, obviously, and at the moment the laws allow them to do things like this, to stay open late. I do realise that they have bouncers who try and keep them off the pavements. But if you happen to come down in the car and it's only a 20-mile zone, you can see them wandering across the road by this time. Drinks in and wits out, and they're just doing whatever they like in the particular area. So whether that could be, I don't know, cut down or not, I don't know. The police are always around, I see.
I thought it was going to cause more problems than it does, and I live quite close to there. I live sort of on a back-facing terrace round, sort of parallel to Osborne Road. And we don't have very much bother at all. But I'm quite a tolerant person, and I think as long as they restrict it to the 11 o'clock closing, that seems to be a tolerable level, because it doesn't really get that loud until the sort of summertime, when it gets a little bit loud. But it's usually bank holidays and things like that. I'm personally not troubled, but I do know people who get more troubled by
too much, basically. Desmond's changed from being a residential area to being largely students and people who come on bank holidays to drink. It's a bit disappointing, but I guess change is what happens. I don't mind how they restrict the licensing, and most of the time it's not a problem. The worst of it is when people do things like throw up in the back lanes, and we get a lot of people using the back lanes as toilets, which isn't very pleasant. But I don't know really how they would restrict it. It's become a sort of cultural hub of the city in many ways. Local councillors have done quite a lot to get students involved in keeping the neighbourhood a bit better. They sort of do mass tidy ups and provide an incentive to do that, which is good, because I think a lot of the students that come to Jesmond are quite privileged students, and they take views to certain views while they're here and they move on.
In my experience of it, I'd say it's a lot less of a problem than it was before, and this is maybe going back about 12 years. I quite like having students back, it makes me feel a bit younger, which is not a bad thing. I've been a student in this area, and I was a student from when they brought in the 24-hour licence. So at the time, I thought it was great. I still think it's great, because it adds to the vibrancy of the area, it brings people and money in, and creates a wonderful atmosphere. The area's developed, and I'd probably say it's a bit mellowed, but from my perspective, it's a good thing. I think students are part of our community, they're part of our city, we should welcome them. And they're a welcome boost to the economy. People such as myself end up staying. Obviously, it's a positive thing. Obviously, sometimes they get a bit noisy. I think we've all been at that age, and it's live and let live. It's a lovely place to mature as an adult, I think. There's lots to do, and they've always been part of Jesmond. And I think, to be honest, they should make it a bit later. Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. The more the merrier. And there's nowhere better than maybe on a bank holiday, or if it's Ladies' Day, or there's a football game on, or whatever, and coming here and having a few drinks through the day, and then moving on when it closes.
In the local elections, what would you like to see councillors change in the environment?
I think, as you said, broken glass and litter is a bit of a problem, so that could be stepped up. I'm happy to join a kind of car sharing company, and I think the more people that do that, the better in terms of the traffic.
Pollution, I think it's ridiculous, the massive Land Rovers that everybody drives to the schools, but I think the only way you can enforce that is say no cars near any of the schools. Just generally just to try and reduce it. We're talking about carbon emissions. Nobody's making any effort to change anything. And the cars are just getting bigger, they're massive, and especially recycling. When I notice go down certain back lanes on the bottom end of Jesmond, near sort of Jesmond Dean, and it just looks like there's been a hurricane every time. And it's a shame because so much of the stuff could be recycled, but when it hits the floor, it's just all. And that's one other issue actually. There is quite a lot of broken glass. If you do cycle, which I do, like I'm constantly looking down the floor, there's glass everywhere. Just that a lot of students don't use the recycling bins, so literally just all rubbish goes into any bin, but fewer rubbish collections, more recycling collections. Okay. And also, you know, I don't know how you do it, it's just that from what I can see, the back lanes around here, I understand they're young people, but they tend to just put everything out just randomly. And it's sort of I wonder how much stuff's actually getting recycled in the area.
I'd like to see better cycling infrastructure. I'd like to see more priority for pedestrians and cyclists rather than cars. I just feel I've lived here for over 20 years and I've seen the number of cars both parked and driving around in the streets go up and up and up in that time. And I think I'd like to see less development in this area. I know it's a very prestigious suburb, and I can see that every little spot of land wants to be built on because they can make an absolute mint out of it. Quite frankly, I think that's appalling. We have high levels of traffic and pollution here as it is. Building more houses is only going to make that worse. But you know, they're crying out for allotments and things right here. You can't get enough of them for love of money. Why aren't the council doing more about it? It shouldn't all be about money and sending off assets that we'll never get back.
Regarding the tone, maybe, and the attitude that was heard at that.
There's a very strong attitude about students' contribution to litter in the community. Now, I'm not saying students don't contribute litter to the community, like they absolutely do. Is it the mass scale that people scale under it to be? I don't think so. And I think that actually students would be very respectful of the area if the respect is two ways. I think that one of the issues is when students are shown quite low quality houses, and sort of letting agents are saying while trying to sell the house, this is a party area, etc. Already in the psyche being in that, you know, it's okay to make a bit of mess, etc. Then you have that sort of steamrolls into a further issue. But to be honest, on the whole, I don't think there's a massive litter issue in Jesmond. I think you need to look at areas at the West End, and I think that's an area that needs more council investment and more council focus and help rather than Jesmond.
Yeah, and I think the Communist candidate made a really excellent point in that we live in a very consumerist society and Greens agreed. And it's about what we can be doing as a collective to be going against this. So, for example, the Dean during the bank holiday weekend, an utterly beautiful weekend, and people came from well outside of the area into this and left barbecues and wrappers and all of this. So, what is it that we can be doing as a community to encourage that recycling, to encourage people to not bring plastics to these places of beauty and these places where we live?
Regarding the antisocial behaviour, could you maybe see where those residents who are concerned about that are coming from, and maybe how you could ease their feeling of this?
I think with antisocial behaviour again, there is an issue there. I think I was speaking to you residents afterwards, and I think some of the candidates just made some good points. Leslie and the Labour candidate. I think everyone's quite quick to say it's the students who are contributing to antisocial behaviour, but at the end of the day, it's people's nature. It's not actually students. You don't suddenly turn into a bottle of wine wielding, shouting person down the street as soon as you start your degree. It's the nature of people. So I think with a lot of Jesmond residents, when they live in a household for 10 years, on the whole, I think they will have 9 years of really friendly neighbours because those people have been brought up particularly well, or they just they're taught respect, etc. And that maybe one anomalous year is because just the way that person is, where they come from or whatever, or how they've been brought up, and they're not, taught how to be a good neighbour, etc. So I don't think it's, the Jesmond population is very varied, and the student population is very diverse, and I don't think it's necessarily students are bad, there are some bad people.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think the universities as a collective have worked very very hard on things like Operation Hope, which has a hotline that you can call when you are faced with this sort of thing. But in addition, I think it goes back to that whole community feel, because if a student feels like they're in a nice dwelling, they've got a nice house, they're in a nice community, you won't see that turnover, but maybe stay for the 2 or 3 years that they are living in that area. So I've lived in the same house for 2 years now because it is a nice house on a nice street and I like my neighbours. So I think it all, in a way, comes into play. But I generally think that maybe 1 or 2 incidents with students has kind of tarnished the collective, and we need to be careful that we're not just jumping on the bandwagon of labelling us all in one way, when it is, like Raf says, the kind of personalities of that year.
I think for every one student who will shout down the street, there are 2 who will be happy doing a little bit.
What more do you think could be done to combat any antisocial behaviour, be that from students or people coming from outside to visit Osborne Road?
I think I'll talk from sort of there maybe less so much people coming outside, because that's difficult, because they go to Osborne Road Street. It's going to be difficult to control them and let them have their fun. I think students in Jesmond, when they arrive, I think it's so vital that when they first arrive, they meet their neighbours and vice versa. Not necessarily put all the onus on students, but if you have that first meeting where you meet your neighbour who's been there for however many years, and you develop that good relationship straight away, whether it's just exchanging numbers, a handshake, or whatever it is, I think that immediately sets everything off on a good foot, and you can exchange lifestyle. Residents say, look, I work, I'm a doctor, or wherever, I have to get up at 6 in the morning, please be quiet, etc. I think that dialogue is not enough, and I think that's one that is quite simple, but I think it could have quite big ramifications.
Yeah, and I think we want to be careful of we don't want Osborne Road to die. We don't want it to stop being that vibrant, wonderful street. I know parents who have sent their kids to Newcastle saying, oh, just wait until you get out to Jesmond, Osborne Road, I remember great fun there. We don't want to lose that, because that is part of where we live. But I certainly think there needs to be more of a presence of kind of law enforcement officers, especially on the weekends and on Wednesday evenings, making sure that these people are kind of looked after and safeguarded and kind of reminded. But I don't think that should then be put back onto the community. I don't think the expenses should then be felt by the people living in that community. I think that's something that comes from central government, unfortunately, because of the costs and the austerity kind of cuts that have impacted us. But I definitely think that's kind of the way forward, because we don't want to lose that vibrant sense there that we get.
So we did have another package where we asked members of the public in Jesmond what they wanted.
Probably very basic things like rubbish collection and things which have an impact on everybody, I think.
Bin clearing. If it was less regular, that would be a real issue. Well, all the back streets on occasion can get quite full, especially like in the summer months last year. And if that was to get worse, that would be a real nightmare.
Adult and children's social care. Why? Because it is a priority, and it's funded by the local tax people. So it needs to be kept, and it is being diminished and diminished and diminished.
I would say just general things that will affect everybody. So like if bin services is getting cut, then that's not going to be great just generally for the environment that we live in. If there's just bins everywhere and things like that, great.
I guess social services. I guess they're least able to absorb the cuts.
Well, I'm always honoured our councils to keep green areas tidy.
Yeah.
Any litter I want, and any dog smoke picked up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I would like to get the police on that.
We'll have a look at some more comments from social media. So we've got a post about litter from Amora Joe. The broken glass scattered all over the pavements and back lanes is absolutely disgraceful. I have 2 dogs and have to walk on the road with them to avoid glass-covered pavements. So I think that's a very hot topic.
Yeah.
It's a little, especially broken glass, seems to get mentioned quite a lot.
Yeah, and definitely as a cyclist coming in and out of Newcastle city centre, I know often on the cycle pathways you do see a lot of broken bottles as people make their way into town. Again, I don't want to label that as a student issue, that is both kind of sides of the community, and again, it's about having that presence in the community of someone there kind of preventing that, and making sure that there is the funding for the council kind of litter collection to go around more regularly and make sure that our streets are cleared up, and not making that money and the owners of that back on the community.
And I think very quickly with when students move into a household, it's illegal. I think it's a legal requirement for there to be glass caddies, and they're, I can count on one hand how probably many there are in student properties. Letting agents don't lobby the council to provide any. So when students arrive, there's no proper way to dispose of your glasses. There's no skips or glass disposal bases at the end of the streets. There is nothing. So I'm not excusing it, but there needs to be that investment to introduce glass, simple things, glass caddies for HMO households, and you might see that problem rectified.
We've got another comment from Mandy Irwin. The amount of rubbish being blown down the terrace and surrounding back lanes at the Jasmine Road is horrendous. Household rubbish, not just crisp packets. Who are the best people to export this to? Who do you think are the best people to deal with it?
So that would be the local council. They're the ones that organise the bin collections. Absolutely, it's the fact that we've now got to fortnightly bin collections, that's leading to a lot of overfill of rubbish. But in particular, I think while we do have to recognise we have a lot of HMO houses, 6 people making enough litter for 1 green bin is going to lead to that overspill. And whether that's an issue with the consumerism that we see in Jesmond, so really we need to lobby the local shops to provide less plastic packaging, less plastic bags, that sort of thing, or whether it's about making students more aware of the opportunities to recycle in the community and providing those opportunities. You very rarely see recycling bins kind of next to a black bin, and that's where a lot of the litter comes out of.
There's also a lot of bins in Jesmond. We go around the back alley, sort of search through bins or try and sort of take that land. So with sort of rubbish flying down the back alleys, often there's a lot of bin tippers who sort of go through Jesmond throughout the day, and I think the police try. With Operation Open, the investment that's there, I think police, because it's such a big issue for residents, I think the police could do more to tackle bin tippers.
Yeah, thank you so much for those comments and for this discussion. We look forward to seeing the results from the local elections on the 2nd, and we wish all the candidates the best of luck.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.